I was halfway through pouring my morning coffee when my phone rang. My sister's name flashed on the screen. I picked up expecting something casual, maybe gossip, maybe a favor. Instead, her voice came sharp and cheerful. "I'm moving into your Lake Arrowhead house tomorrow. I already replaced the wallpaper, so send me $3,000 for it." The mug trembled in my hand, coffee spilling over my fingers. I laughed because what else could I do? But when she added Mom and Dad already said yes, something inside me cracked. And that's the moment I realized whatever this was, it wasn't about wallpaper anymore. When the call ended, I just stood there, phone still pressed against my ear, as the sound of the espresso machine hissed behind me. The smell of burnt coffee filled the kitchen, bitter and heavy. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd misheard her. Maybe it was one of Abigail's ridiculous jokes, the kind she used to pull when we were kids. But then the text came through a picture of my living room. The wallpaper torn down, the caption reading, "Looks better already." My hands started shaking. I called her back, but it went straight to voicemail. So I did the one thing I shouldn't have done. I called my mother. "Mom," I said, trying to sound calm, "Abigail just told me she's moving into my Lake Arrowhead house. Please tell me that's not true." There was a pause. Then my mother's voice, smooth and dismissive. "Yes, honey. She mentioned it. Things have been hard for her lately, and you're not using that house anyway. It just makes sense." I blinked, feeling something twist inside me. "You gave her permission?" "Well, your father and I agreed it's better than letting it sit empty. Families help each other, Hillary. Don't be so dramatic." That word dramatic, I'd heard it my whole life. Every time Abigail crossed a line, every time I dared to protest, I could almost hear my father in the background mumbling, "She's overreacting again." I bit my lip until I tasted blood. "Mom." She changed the wallpaper, without asking me. "Oh, please," she sighed. "She has good taste. It'll make the place feel warmer. Besides, you can always change it back." I didn't respond. I just listened to the clink of dishes in the background, to my mother's easy tone, as if what she'd done wasn't trespassing, wasn't betrayal. When I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the dark glass of the kitchen window. Behind me, Los Angeles glowed tiny golden lights scattered over the hills. My apartment had always felt safe separate, but suddenly it felt invaded too. Abigail had always been the kind of person who took and expected applause for it. My parents had always enabled it. I could still remember being 16, saving up for months to buy my first car. Abigail borrowed it just for the weekend. 3 months later, she returned it with scratches down both sides, the gas tank empty. Mom's words still rang in my head. She didn't mean it. "Hillary, be kind. She's your sister." I had been kind over and over again. But as I stared at the phone in my hand, seeing that unread text with the photo of my ruined living room, something changed. A slow, unfamiliar heat built in my chest. It wasn't shock anymore. It wasn't hurt. It was the quiet, precise anger of someone who'd finally run out of grace. And I had no idea yet just how far I was willing to go to get my house back. By sunset, I was already on the highway to Lake Arrowhead. The traffic thinned as the city lights faded behind me, replaced by long stretches of pine trees and the hum of the tires against the asphalt. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, every word from my mother's voice, like a match striking the same wound. "Families help each other, Hillary. Don't be so dramatic." The farther I drove, the more that phrase began to rot in my chest. When I finally turned onto the familiar narrow road that curved around the lake, the air smelled like pine and cold water. I'd always loved this drive. It used to mean peace, quiet, my own space to breathe. But when I pulled up to the gate and saw the porch light glowing, my stomach dropped. I never left the light on. The curtains were different too, checkered, not white. Someone else's taste. I parked and sat there for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel, trying to believe it wasn't real. Then I unlocked the door with my own key. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Paint and glue, fresh, sharp, invasive. The living room, that once had soft beige walls, now screamed with gold patterns that shimmered under the light like bad hotel decor. My furniture was pushed aside. My favorite reading chair, the one I'd carried up those stairs myself, was covered with a floral blanket that wasn't mine. I moved through the house slowly, every step heavier than the last. In the kitchen, a spice rack had been screwed directly into the wall. crooked. I ran my fingers along the drill holes. My hand came away dusty with white plaster. Then I went upstairs. My study door was half open. I hesitated before pushing it as if the air behind it could burn. And when I saw it, I forgot to breathe. The walls were pink, not soft or pastel, neon bright enough to sting my eyes. My desk was shoved to the corner, books thrown in boxes, my framed photos stacked face down. It felt like walking into a stranger's house wearing my skin. I pressed my hand against the door frame, my pulse hammering in my throat. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. That's when I saw it, a small white dome in the corner of the ceiling. The security camera. 3 months ago, before leaving for a long project, I'd installed cameras inside the house, just in case. Back then, it felt unnecessary, maybe paranoid. But now that tiny lens was the only thing that made my knees stop shaking. I pulled out my phone, logged into the system, and scrolled through the saved footage. It loaded slowly, frame by frame, until finally there she was. Abigail, walking through the front door with the spare key, laughing on the phone with someone mom. She waved in a few contractors pointing at the walls. "Tear this down. Paint that pink. It's going to be perfect for us." Her voice filled the quiet room through my phone speaker. "Sophie will freak out, but once we move in, it's ours." I stood frozen, watching her smile on the screen like it was a home renovation show, except the house was mine. And as I stared, the anger inside me finally went cold. Not the kind that burns, the kind that focuses. I backed up every file, labeled each folder carefully: living room footage, kitchen, upstairs hallway. Then I sat on the edge of the desk, the pink wall glaring behind me, and whispered to the empty room, "You made the wrong move this time." By the time the first light crept through the window, I hadn't slept a second. The house was silent, the kind of silence that hums in your bones. I sat at the kitchen counter laptop, opened every camera file downloaded, and backed up twice, one in cloud storage, one on an external drive. Beside it lay a neat stack of photos I'd taken: the gold wallpaper, the drill holes, the pink walls. Each one labeled, each one evidence. At 8:15 a.m., I drove straight to downtown Los Angeles to the office of Mr. Walker, a real estate attorney I'd worked with before. He was known for being calm, almost too calm, the kind of man who never raised his voice but always won. When I walked in, he looked up from his desk, eyes narrowing at my expression. "Hillary," he said, "you look like someone who's about to burn down a building." "Not burn," I said quietly, setting the laptop on his desk. "Rebuild." He motioned for me to sit. "Tell me everything." I did. From the phone call to the wallpaper to my mother's words, families help each other. He didn't interrupt. Just listened, pen tapping lightly against a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Do you have proof they entered without permission?" I turned the laptop toward him and pressed play. The video filled the screen: Abigail opening my front door with the spare key, smiling for the contractors, giving orders like she owned the place. The sound was crisp. He watched for nearly a minute, then stopped the video and exhaled slowly. "This," he said, "isn't a family dispute. It's unlawful entry, property damage, and extortion." "She demanded payment for the renovation, correct?" $3,000, I replied, my voice steady. "She said I owed her." He scribbled something down. "Good. We'll file both a civil and a criminal complaint. Civil for damages, criminal for trespass and coercion." For a moment I just sat there, watching him write. The weight of the last 24 hours pressed against my ribs, but under it something else had begun to grow: a sense of control, of clarity. Mr. Walker looked up. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? Once we file, there's no taking it back. It'll destroy the family dynamic." I met his eyes. "There's nothing left to destroy." He nodded, once pulled a blank legal form from his drawer and began typing. The rhythmic click of the keys sounded almost musical, like punctuation to every boundary they'd crossed. As he typed, I glanced out the window. Down on the street, people were moving through their lives, coffee cups in hand, unaware that mine had just shattered the day before. When he was done, he printed the papers, the machine humming steadily between us. He slid the first document toward me and said, "Sign here." I signed without hesitation. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the quiet sister who kept the peace. I felt like someone who'd finally drawn the line and dared them to cross it again. 3 days later, I drove back to Lake Arrowhead. The morning air was cold enough to sting my lungs, and the lake shimmered under a thin layer of fog. In front of the house sat an unfamiliar minivan stuffed with boxes and children's toys. My stomach tightened. They'd moved in. I parked behind them, stepped out, and stood for a second with my hands in my coat pockets, watching the smoke curl from the chimney of my own home. The key felt heavy in my hand as I unlocked the front door. They were all there. My parents on the sofa, Abigail at the counter, Ethan on his phone pretending not to see me. 4 sets of eyes turned toward me. Abigail was the first to speak. "Hillary, you're finally here. We were just talking about you." Her tone was light mocking. "You got the letter from your lawyer, right? What the hell is that about?" I closed the door behind me, calm. "It's about you breaking into my house." "Oh my God, are we really doing this?" she scoffed. "Mom and Dad said it was fine. You barely even use this place." Mom leaned forward. "Hillary, be reasonable. She needed help. You have so much. Why can't you just share?" I looked at her, at the woman who'd raised me to believe keeping peace mattered more than being respected. "Because it's mine." Dad's voice rumbled. "We're family. You're taking this too far. Withdraw that lawsuit right now." "No." Abigail crossed her arms. "We already moved in. It's done. We spent money fixing it up, made it better. You should be thanking us." That made me laugh. I took the folder from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. "You want to talk about money? Here's something you should see." She frowned, flipping through the first few pages, copies of the property deed title certificate and a contract signed 3 months ago. "What is this? A full renovation project I approved and permitted with the city," I said evenly. "Demolition starts tomorrow morning at 9. The room froze. Abigail blinked, her voice cracking. "Demolition? You're kidding." "Do I look like I'm kidding?" I stepped closer. "Everything you see here, the wallpaper, the paint, the furniture you brought, it'll be gone by tomorrow. Rubble." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "Hillary, this is insane," Dad muttered. "You wouldn't dare. Watch me." Abigail's face turned red. "You can't just tear it down. I spent money on this place." "And that," I said softly, "is called a confession." Her jaw dropped. "You just admitted to altering and occupying private property without consent." I continued, each word slow and deliberate. "Every word is being recorded on my phone right now, and the police already have copies of the footage showing you walking in with the spare key giving orders to the contractors." Abigail's mouth opened, but no sound came out. That was when the knock came at the door. 2 uniformed officers stood outside their badges, catching the light. "Good morning. Is this the residence of Ms. Hillary Carter?" "Yes." I stepped aside. "We're here regarding a criminal complaint, unlawful entry, and property damage. We need to speak with Ms. Abigail Collins." My mother shot up from the sofa. "This is outrageous. You can't just barge in here." The officer's tone remained calm. "Ma'am, please step aside. The house belongs to Ms. Carter. Everyone else is required to vacate immediately until the investigation concludes." The color drained from Abigail's face. No, please, this can't be happening." She turned to me, voice trembling. "Hillary, we're sisters." I looked at her, the same woman who'd laughed on the phone while tearing down my walls. "You should have remembered that before you stole from me." As the officers escorted her toward the door, Ethan stood frozen, pale and silent. When she passed him, she snapped, "Say something." He didn't. He just whispered, "You lied to all of us." Outside, I heard her voice rising, begging, then fading into the distance as the police car pulled away. Inside, the silence was heavier than before. My parents stared at me, disbelief written all over their faces. Mom finally spoke, tears streaking down her cheeks. "You've destroyed your own sister's life." I met her eyes. "No, Mom, she destroyed it herself." Dad took a step forward, voice shaking with rage. "We raised you better than this. Then you should have taught me boundaries, not obedience." I turned away, picked up my folder, and walked to the front door. Before stepping out, I said quietly, "Construction starts at 9. You might want to remove anything sentimental before then." I left them standing there in the wreck of what they'd built a family that called theft, love, and control care. When I reached my car, the first demolition truck was already coming up the hill, its yellow lights flashing in the fog. I rolled down the window, watched it stop at the gate, and told the driver, "Tomorrow, 9 sharp. No delays." He nodded. As the engine growled to life, I felt something loosen in my chest. For the first time, the word family didn't make me flinch. It made me stronger. And when the truck disappeared around the bend, I smiled to myself because the house wasn't the only thing being rebuilt. The next few months passed like quiet thunder. Abigail's case moved faster than anyone expected. The footage spoke louder than tears, and the law didn't care about family drama, it cared about proof. When the verdict came, the courtroom felt colder than any mountain air I'd ever breathed. "Guilty," the judge said simply. Abigail got 3 years of probation plus $85,000 in damages. Ethan filed for divorce a week later, taking full custody of their kids. My parents sat in the gallery, faces blank, as if the world had shifted under their feet. News spread through our small circle like wildfire. People whispered about the sister who pressed charges, about the golden child who fell. My mother stopped returning calls. My father refused to look me in the eye. I didn't care. I'd spent too long shrinking myself to make them comfortable. 9 months later, the house stood again. New frame, new walls, all traces of their intrusion erased. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the lake open and clean. No gold wallpaper, no pink paint, just light and air. One evening, as the sun bled into the water, I received a message from a cousin Abigail's working nights at a fast food place. "Living in your parents' basement." I read it once, then deleted it. Justice doesn't roar. It hums quietly, steady and certain, like the sound of the lake outside my window. And in that calm, I finally understood revenge isn't fury. It's peace. Sometimes I still drive up to the lake before sunrise, just to watch the light crawl across the water. That house isn't just walls. It's proof that silence can be louder than rage, and that boundaries can be rebuilt stronger than before. People say revenge changes you. Maybe it does, but for me it simply returned what they took: peace. If this story hit home, share it. Someone out there needs to hear that it's okay to fight back quietly and completely.